my personal identity is not a neutral thing, but it's what I think about myself, how I see my worth, and what I think I'm capable of at any given time. Well, slap my bottom and call me Shirley, because that changes all the time. I mean, our moods can change with the tide. Our friends and family's moods can change with the tide. Basically, everybody's moods can change with the tide. And our perception of ourselves, which has derived from our childhood experiences and the meanings we made about ourselves from those experiences, positive and negative, get validated one way or the other by the current events in our lives, and the current events in our lives change with the fucking tide, too. I mean, in just 1 week, we can experience a myriad of ups and downs, wins and losses, good times, bad times. I know I've had my share. And when our perception of an opinion of ourselves changes with every single thing that occurs, it can look something like this. On Monday, I'm smart. On Tuesday, I'm dumb. On Wednesday, I'm terrible. On Thursday, in the morning, I'm gorgeous. And in the afternoon, I'm fat and ugly. On Friday, I look tired, but I'm a nice person. On Saturday, no one has ever met anyone like me, but I'm kind of weird. And on Sunday, I rest. Because I deserve it, but also because I'm lazy. And now you might be saying, come on, give me a break. I need some consistency. Well, you ain't gonna get it when you're riding the ego train, girl. All aboard the ego train to Fluctuation City, the city where everything fluctuates and nothing doesn't fluctuate. Change is coming, change is coming, change is coming, change is coming. I mean, you know, no wonder none of us can settle on a career or a mate. Okay, so let me get this straight. Looking at myself from the ego perspective, how I feel about myself and how I identify myself to myself is based on how current events and the feedback I receive from others reflect the unconscious beliefs I have about myself, positive and negative, majority of which were created when I was anywhere from 2 to 6 years old. That seems like a great plan. JK, I mean, have you seen toddlers? They literally go through the 6 stages of grief on a 45-minute cycle. So, where the fuck does the ego come from? Great question. Okay, so when we're born into this world, our ego structure starts being built. Most importantly, for the purpose of getting what American psychologist Abraham Maslow called our human hierarchy of needs met. Starting with the most important first 3 needs, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. JK, for reals, they are physiological needs like food, water, and shelter, the need for safety, and the need for love and belonging. And as we develop, we may learn certain ways of reacting to the world around us in order to try to get those needs met. It may be very hard when you're a little baby munchkin to figure out all the formulas of who we need to be or how we need to be to try to have as good a life as we can, while we're also trying to figure out who we want to be for ourselves. Now, you might be thinking, so basically, what it sounds like you're saying, Suzanne, is that when we're kids, we just throw a bunch of shit against the wall and see what sticks. And of course, I have seen some kids actually do that, and it was traumatizing. Anyway, the answer to your question is, yeah, that's about it. And I know that doesn't sound like the road to creating a consistent and sure sense of self. Well, actually, it sounds more like being on one of those carnival rides. That's a giant disc with walls all around it, and everyone grabs a piece of the wall, and then the disc starts spinning and shaking you all around, and all of the people on the ride get tossed about, and they can't get back to their original spot on the wall, and not even their spouses can save them. They just have to watch them be tossed around like a piece of chicken in a shake and bake bag. But seriously, folks, I am being soups dramatic, and it may not be this dramatic for you, but it may be for some, and if so, holla. But basically, what I'm trying to say is this ego shit can be soups inconsistent. And when it gets really difficult is when we feel triggered or vulnerable. Then the whole thing can really go to shit. Like, for me, whenever I put myself in a vulnerable position by putting myself out there, like doing this podcast, or by being authentic in relationships and expressing my needs, it can feel really scary. And I tend to very anxiously look externally for my perception of myself and my barometer of how I'm doing via other people's reactions to me and how they treat me. And since Other people are also having their own moods and their own insecurities in external situations that are constantly changing. External sources are not always the most reliable source for our self-perception. Now, am I saying don't take honest and well-meaning feedback from others? No, of course not. But it's also important to be discerning of whose feedback you're considering in your self-perception and not exclude your own inner wisdom. Okay, so from what we've just discussed thus far, it seems that left unchecked, our egos can really come up with some very unreliable equations about who we are and what is true. Hey girl, it's your ego. So I was assessing your life, and when I do the math, on a scale from 1 to 10, I'd say you're fucked. Listen, I know I'm a silly ass motherfucker, but for real, I think when we talk about this stuff, it takes some of the pressure off of us. Because it is so easy to get caught up in the idea that if we're not perfect, we're failing. And that we should have it all figured out, have all the answers, live life with 100% success, always be happy, always have everything under control. And from what we've just discussed, it's impossible to control everything in your life. It's impossible to always get it right. Listen, queens. For all the ages, the great thinkers and stinkers of our time have been trying to answer the question, who are we? Thinkers and stinkers like the Buddha, who said, from the Buddhist perspective, the idea of individual self is an illusion. It is not possible to separate self from its surroundings. Okay, Mr. Buddha, so what you're telling me is that my ego identity is not only based on how I'm feeling about myself on any given day, but that it's also completely tied to my surroundings? Oh, jeez. Well, then let's go somewhere else, because I think I just saw a roach. Check, please. Okay, so I think the overall theme of what I've learned about ego is that it's kind of codependent on the external world and on our moods. But listen, don't get your panties in too much of a bunch, because there is actually incredible beauty in this shit show. And the beauty is that in our sublimely imperfect, vulnerable, and flawed humanity, in our experience of the drama, the ups and downs, the pains and pleasures, all of our experiences and challenges help us to understand each other, teach us compassion, expand our hearts and minds, so we can forgive ourselves and each other, and so much more. And that's life. That's what the people say. I don't know why this episode is a musical, but it is. Any hoodles, what I'm saying is that there's an upside to it all. And yes, queen, that is kind of a really cool upside. Happy face emoji with hearts. Also, I'm not trying to dog the ego or the thinking mind or our personalities or individual character and all that, because you know I love drama. And our personalities and all that human delightfulness are totally awesome. All I'm saying is that it helps to have access to an axis in all our human chaos, and that the ever-changing and externally driven ego can be tempered by the inner presence of who we are. Eckhart Tolle said, "Presence is the arising of a dimension of consciousness from where you can become aware that there's a voice in the head. That awareness is beyond thinking. It's a space of consciousness where you can be the observer of your own mind, the awareness behind the thought processes. For human beings to discover this dimension is extraordinarily important. It is, in fact, as I see it, the next step in the evolution of humanity." Well, right on, Eckhart, because you know that famous Buddhist saying, "The mind makes an excellent servant, but a terrible master."